Ever wonder how pirates survive massive storms without modern technology? No weather apps, no radar, not even a basic weather forecast. They had to figure out ways to predict and survive nature's worst tantrums at sea, and their solutions would make modern sailors either laugh or take notes. Back in the days before fancy radar systems and weather apps, these seafaring rascals had to rely on their wits, wisdom, and sometimes just plain weird observations to stay alive. Let me tell you, they got pretty creative about it. The sky was their TV weather report, minus the charming meteorologist with perfect hair. Pirates would spend hours watching clouds shift and change, developing an almost supernatural ability to read them. Those fluffy white clouds that look so peaceful in your backyard picnic photos, to pirates they were like nature's warning signs. When those innocent puffs suddenly transformed into dark, menacing towers, every sailor knew they were in for a wild ride. More interesting still were the high-altitude cirrus clouds, those wispy, thin ones that look like horsetails. If a pirate spotted these bad boys, they knew they had about 24 hours before a storm hit. Pirates were basically human barometers. They could literally feel a storm coming in their bones, and I'm not just talking about that old knee injury acting up. The air pressure would drop before a storm, creating this heavy, oppressive feeling that made breathing feel like sucking air through a straw. One old pirate log I came across mentioned how a crew once turned their ship around just because their captain said the air felt wrong. Turns out he was right. They avoided sailing straight into what became known as the Great Storm of 1703, which sank over 1,000 ships in a single week. Now you might think all those old sailor sayings were just nonsense passed down after too many bottles of rum, but there was actually some solid science behind them. Take red sky at night, sailors delight. Red sky in morning, sailors take warning. This wasn't just some pretty rhyme. It was based on the fact that weather systems typically move from west to east in the northern hemisphere. A red sky at night meant clear weather was coming, while a red morning sky warned of approaching storms. Smart pirates could read these signs like we read text messages today. Speaking of rum, let's talk about one of the funnier aspects of pirate weather forecasting: their superstitions. Some crews were so superstitious, they'd pour perfectly good rum into the ocean to appease angry weather gods. One captain reportedly kept a special bottle of storm rum that was only opened during the worst weather, half for the ocean, half for his courage. Historical records from the Caribbean show that some pirate ships would even perform elaborate ceremonies during storms, complete with chants and rum offerings. Talk about a waste of good spirits. One particularly clever method pirates used was watching the height and pattern of waves. They knew that when waves started coming from multiple directions at once, it meant different weather systems were colliding, a sure sign of brewing trouble. They called these widowmakers because of how dangerous they could be. One old pirate's diary from 1725 described them as the sea having an argument with itself. Pretty poetic for a bunch of guys who probably hadn't brushed their teeth in years. A lesser-known fact is that pirates also used their noses to predict weather. They claimed they could smell an incoming storm, and modern science backs this up. What they were actually smelling was ozone created by lightning storms and the distinct scent of rain hitting dry soil carried on the wind. Some experienced captains were so good at this that their crews nicknamed them weather witches, though probably not to their faces. It's really smart how this whole system of weather prediction worked together. A good pirate captain would take everything into account: the clouds, the air pressure, and even those old sayings that seem silly at first glance. It wasn't perfect, but it worked surprisingly well. Historical records show that experienced pirates could predict major storms with about 70% accuracy. Not bad for people who thought the earth was flat. Some of the more unique methods included watching the color of the sea itself. A deep, dark green often meant bad weather was approaching, while a clear, bright blue usually meant fair sailing ahead. Pirates also paid attention to the moon. They noticed that storms were more likely during a full moon due to its effect on tides. One particularly superstitious crew even kept a log of which crew members snoring predicted the worst weather, though I suspect that had more to do with keeping morale up during long voyages than actual weather forecasting. The most experienced pirates could combine all these signs into a surprisingly accurate prediction system. They'd note how the wind changed direction, watch for any unusual phosphorescence in the water at night, and even keep track of how their old battle wounds ached. It wasn't exactly the Weather Channel, but it kept them alive in some of the world's most dangerous waters, And while these weather reading skills were impressive, pirates had some even more surprising forecasters on their ships. A few months ago, I had no idea what a health ring even was until my fiancée got me one, and I have to say, I'm shocked this isn't a widely known and used product. It tracks my stress levels, and what I found out is that some supplements made my stress score spike, while others actually helped bring it down. I adjusted a few things based on that, and honestly, I feel 10 years younger. My wife mainly uses it to track her menstrual cycles, and she is obsessed with her sleep quality score. I noticed they are currently running a limited 69% discount, but I don't know how long it will last. It's currently only $60, and it's clear. This one is the best bang for your buck, with other health rings priced around $350 with less functions. They managed to price it this low because they cut out the middleman like Amazon, Walmart, etc., who drive up the price and take a big margin, ending up with the customer paying 3 to 5 times more. If you are on TV, you can check it out yourself by pausing the video and scanning the QR code with your phone camera or clicking the first link in the description of this video. They are furry and feathered. That's right, pirates relied on animals to predict storms, and these creatures were surprisingly good at their jobs. Let's start with the ship's cats, the champion of weather forecasting at sea. These weren't your average house cats lounging in sunbeams and knocking things off shelves. Ship's cats were considered so valuable for their storm-predicting abilities that some pirates would actually steal them from other vessels. A cat was worth its weight in gold, which admittedly isn't much for a cat, but you get the point. Research from maritime historians shows that about 90% of pirate ships in the 1700s had at least one cat on board. The most famous was probably Storm Sally, a black cat who sailed with the notorious Captain Sam Bellamy. Legend has it she predicted the storm that would eventually sink his ship, though clearly nobody listened to her that day. Maybe she was too busy cleaning her paws. The way cats predicted storms was actually pretty incredible. They'd start acting weird hours before any human could sense trouble. We're talking about sneezing fits, grooming themselves backwards, and getting super jumpy. One pirate's log from 1718 describes his ship's cat doing backflips off the mast, though I suspect that particular entry might have been written after a few too many rounds of rum. But it wasn't just about cats. Seabirds were like the pirates' early warning system. These birds had better weather radar than most modern airports. When pirates saw seagulls and albatrosses suddenly heading inland, they knew it was time to batten down the hatches. One study of ships' logs from the golden age of piracy showed that seabird behavior predicted storms accurately about 85% of the time, which is better than some weather apps I've used. Some pirate ships had special lookout posts just for watching bird behavior. They called them birds' nests, which is actually where we get the term crow's nest from today. Though why they called it a crow's nest when they were watching seagulls is beyond me. Maybe seagull's nest just didn't have the same ring to it. Now let's talk about the unsung heroes of pirate weather forecasting, rats. Yes, those same rats that probably carried plenty of diseases also saved countless pirate lives. When rats started moving to higher parts of the ship, or worse, trying to leave altogether, pirates knew they were in serious trouble. There's actually a documented case from 1716 where an entire pirate crew abandoned ship just because they saw the rats leaving. The ship sank in a storm the next day. The rats, presumably, had already booked themselves a nice vacation somewhere sunny. The connection between rats and weather prediction wasn't just superstition either. Scientists now know that rats can detect changes in air pressure much better than humans can. They can feel a storm coming days before we see the first cloud. One captain's log noted, "When the rats head up, we head out." Short, simple, and probably saved quite a few lives. Even insects played their part in this animal weather service. Flies would become more aggressive before a storm, and cockroaches would start appearing on deck, which was basically nature's way of saying, hey, there's water coming and lots of it. One pirate wrote that he trusted a cockroach's weather sense more than his first mate's. Though to be fair, the first mate had been known to navigate by following mermaids that turned out to be manatees. The really clever pirates learned to watch all these animals at once. If the cat was doing backflips, the seagulls were heading for shore, and the rats were booking cruise tickets, well, you didn't need to be a genius to figure out what was coming. Though some captains still needed convincing, there's a famous story about a pirate captain who ignored all these signs and ended up having to swim back to port. His crew supposedly nicknamed him Captain Birdbrain after that. With all these animal weather forecasters on board, you'd think pirates would have been pretty safe at sea. But knowing a storm was coming was one thing. Dealing with it was something else entirely. Getting a ship ready was like trying to clean your room in 5 minutes before your parents got home. Except instead of dirty socks, you're dealing with several tons of wooden death traps. First up, the cannons. These bad boys weren't just for show. Each one weighed as much as 5 modern cars combined. A loose cannon on deck during a storm was like having an angry elephant doing parkour on your ship. Not fun. Pirates would use thick ropes and wooden wedges to secure them, a process they called boxing the guns. Historical records show that more sailors died from loose cannons during storms than from actual cannon fire in battles. Talk about being killed by your own weapons. The real chaos started below deck. Pirates had to move everything heavy to the lowest part of the ship, a job they absolutely hated. Imagine playing Tetris, but every piece weighs hundreds of pounds and the game room is swaying back and forth. One pirate's diary from 1721 complained, "Moved the treasure chest for the 3rd time today. Captain says it's for balance. I say he just enjoys watching us suffer." Getting all this stuff secured wasn't just about keeping things tidy. The lower they could get the ship's center of gravity, the less likely they were to capsize. A study of shipwrecks from the golden age of piracy shows that ships with properly secured cargo were 3 times more likely to survive major storms. Though I suspect the study didn't count the ships that went down with all hands, dead men tell no tales, as they say. Then there was the fire situation. Pirates had to put out every flame on the ship. Lanterns, cooking fires, everything. Ever tried finding your way around a pitching ship in complete darkness? It's like playing Marco Polo in a bouncy castle, except the pool is the entire ocean. Records show that fire during storms sank more pirate ships than naval battles did. One spark in the wrong place could turn a sturdy ship into driftwood within hours. But the real action happened in the rigging. Pirates had to adjust the sails just right. Too much sail and the wind would tear the masts right off. Too little and they'd lose control of the ship. They called this reefing the sails, and it was probably the most dangerous job on the ship. The process involved climbing up 50 feet in the air, trying to fold up massive sheets of canvas while the whole ship rolled beneath them. One veteran pirate described it as trying to fold a wet blanket while riding a wild horse, except the horse is drunk and trying to kill you. Pirates developed a complex system of sail management for storms. They'd use different combinations depending on wind strength. Full sails, half sails, quarter sails, or in the worst cases, just a tiny storm sail no bigger than a modern bedroom sheet. Getting this wrong meant disaster. Records from 1715 describe a pirate ship that kept too much sail up during a Caribbean storm. The masts snapped like twigs, taking half the deck with them. The most critical preparation was strengthening the hull itself. Pirates would run extra support ropes called preventer stays from bow to stern, essentially giving their ship a tight corset to help it resist twisting in heavy seas. They'd also set up emergency pumps, usually simple wooden devices that could move about 100 gallons per minute. Not very efficient by today's standards, but when your ship is taking on water, every drop counts. One particularly clever innovation was the storm anchor. Unlike regular anchors, these were designed to be dragged behind the ship during severe weather, acting like a brake to slow the vessel and keep its bow pointed into the waves. Made from heavy canvas and rope in a cone shape, these sea anchors could mean the difference between riding out a storm and becoming scattered across the ocean floor. Pirates also had to secure their weapons and ammunition. Wet gunpowder was useless gunpowder. They'd store it in specially designed boxes lined with tar and canvas, sometimes even wrapping individual powder horns in oiled leather. According to one ship's inventory from 1722, a single pirate vessel could carry over a ton of gunpowder, all of which needed to stay bone dry despite waves crashing over the deck. The entire process of stormproofing a ship was exhausting, dangerous work that had to be done perfectly, because there were no second chances at sea. But even with all these preparations, the most dangerous part was still to come. Surviving a storm at sea wasn't just about keeping the ship afloat, it was also about keeping the crew breathing. A ship's crew during a storm was like a really dangerous dance team where one wrong move meant someone was going swimming with the sharks. Rule number 1, staying tied up. No, not like in the movies. Pirates would run long ropes called lifelines across the deck that they could attach themselves to. According to ship records from the 1700s, falling overboard during a storm had a survival rate of exactly 0%. One captain wrote, "Lost Johnson today." He said tying himself to the ship was for cowards. The fish probably disagree. Working in shifts was crucial. You couldn't have everyone exhausted at once. That's how ships ended up as underwater museums. A typical storm watch would last 4 hours, and crews developed a rotation system that would make modern workplace schedulers jealous. Historical records show that crews who managed their shifts well had a 60% better chance of surviving long storms. Though, as one pirate noted in his diary, 4 hours on deck feels like 4 years when you're being slapped by waves the size of churches. The deck during a storm was no place for fancy footwork. Pirates learned to crawl instead of walk. Sounds silly, but it kept them alive. They'd move around on all fours, staying as low as possible. One particularly proud pirate refused to crawl and insisted on walking normally. His crewmates nicknamed him High Step Harry, right up until he became Overboard Harry. Handling the sails in a storm required incredible teamwork. Each sail adjustment needed perfect timing. Too slow and the wind could tear the canvas to shreds. Too fast and someone might get tangled in the ropes. Pirates developed special storm signals because no one could hear anything over the wind. A pulled ear meant tighten that rope, while a slapped thigh meant loosen it. Getting these signals mixed up could be problematic. As one sailor wrote, McGregor thought the captain was dancing. Turned out he was trying to say the mast was breaking. Speaking of communication, pirates had to develop a special storm vocabulary, short, clear words that couldn't be misunderstood. Now became go, stop became hold, and any complicated instructions were simplified to basic hand signals. One crew apparently tried using whistles until they realized everyone's whistles sounded the same. The resulting chaos reportedly had 3 pirates pulling the same rope in 3 different directions. Food and water during storms was another challenge. Try eating soup while riding a roller coaster. That's basically what meals were like. Pirates developed a storm diet of dried meat and hard biscuits, foods you could eat with one hand while holding on to something with the other. They'd also secure water barrels with extra care. A broken water barrel in a storm wasn't just a mess, it was a potential death sentence. The most dangerous job was checking for damage during the storm. Someone had to go below deck regularly to make sure the ship wasn't falling apart from the inside. They called this cheerful task the Death Watch. According to one ship's log, pirates would draw straws for this duty, and there was always that one guy who somehow managed to pick the longest straw every single time. As one pirate wrote, "Strange how Murphy's straw is always longest. Stranger still how he has 6 fingers after losing 2 last month." Storm injuries required quick thinking and questionable medical practices. Cuts, breaks, and sprains were common, but you couldn't exactly perform careful surgery on a rolling ship. Pirates developed a system of quick-fix medicine that would make modern doctors faint. Everything from using rum as an antiseptic and painkiller to making splints from broken barrel staves. One ship's doctor proudly recorded that he'd successfully set a broken arm during a hurricane, though he admitted the arm ended up slightly more curved than nature intended. But even with all these safety measures in place, the pirates' biggest enemy wasn't the injuries or the waves. It was the constant threat of their ship becoming a bathtub. Batten down the hatches. Turns out this wasn't just something pirates yelled to sound cool. Keeping water out of a ship during a storm was like trying to keep a paper boat dry in the bathtub. Nearly impossible, but you had to try anyway. The hatches were like the doors and windows of a ship, except they had the annoying habit of letting in the ocean if you didn't seal them properly. Pirates would cover them with heavy canvas and nail wooden strips, called battens, across them, hence the famous phrase. According to ship records, a single poorly sealed hatch could let in enough water to sink a ship in less than an hour. One captain wrote, "Found Thompson trying to plug a leaking hatch with his hat. Points for creativity, 0 for effectiveness." Ventilation holes posed another problem. Ships needed these holes for air circulation, but during storms, they became nature's way of installing an unwanted indoor pool. Pirates developed a clever system of wooden plugs, each marked with the location of its matching hole. Of course, there was always that one person who lost their plugs. Historical records mention a creative sailor who tried using his sock collection as emergency plugs. Surprisingly, it worked, though no one wanted to be near him when he got them back. The real nightmare was dealing with leaks below the waterline. Pirates carried emergency patches made of lead-lined canvas and wooden plugs of various sizes. When a leak sprang, they'd hammer these patches into place faster than you could say, "We're sinking." One ship's log from 1719 recorded, "Today, we used 47 plugs, 3 shirts, 2 boots, and the cook's favorite hat to stay afloat." The cook is not pleased. Pirates also developed an ingenious system of leak detection using chalk marks. They'd draw lines at different heights on the hull's interior. If the chalk lines started disappearing, they knew exactly how fast water was coming in. According to maritime records, this simple system saved hundreds of ships by helping crews prioritize their repair efforts. One captain's log noted, "The chalk lines are disappearing faster than my crew's courage. Time to get creative." Emergency repairs often required bizarre solutions. Some crews would stuff oakum into cracks, while others used a mixture of animal fat and sawdust to seal leaks. One particularly desperate crew reportedly used their entire supply of cheese to plug holes. Apparently, the salt water hardened it into something resembling cement. Their log entry read, "The rats are disappointed, but at least we're not sinking." The most critical areas to protect were the joints where the ship's planks met. These seams could open up during storms, turning the hull into something resembling a very leaky basket. Pirates would keep special storm putty ready, a mixture of tar, animal hair, and whatever else they could find that might stick. Some crews even had dedicated putty watchers during storms, crew members whose only job was to look for failing seams. All these methods, from weather prediction to animal warnings, from ship preparation to crew safety, and finally to keeping the water out, worked together to create a complex system of storm survival. While modern sailors might laugh at some of these techniques, there's no denying that these pirates knew what they were doing.